I want to talk about forgiveness. Now, this is a crucial subject, one that's been, I have to say, sometimes within the Christian church, if you've been around the Christian church and you're just watching this, I have to say that I think this can be really, really badly handled. And it really depends on what your background is, what you're being asked to forgive. Now, I worked for a long time with adult victims of sexual abuse, and talking to them about forgiveness, although I think it's really important, you have to be incredibly sensitive. And for people who've been really traumatized in ways that has been horrible by other people, forgiveness is definitely a journey. It's not an event, although you might have some really kind of crucial times in that journey. And the first thing I want to say about forgiveness isn't saying it's okay. For many of the people that I work with, some terrible things have happened to them, and it will never be okay. What was done to them will never be right. What was done to me as a child will never be right. I've had to go on my journey of forgiveness, but absolutely it isn't right, and God isn't saying so. And actually, when Jesus died on the cross and forgave us, it was clearly a very, very serious business, forgiveness. Because his own son was taking the kind of the brunt of that upon himself. And so the things that happen that we go on the journey of forgiveness about are very costly and very painful. It was costly and painful for Jesus, and it's often costly and painful for us. But it can be less painful if we understand what's going on. Now, Old and New Testament actually talk about two ways of doing things, and the Old Testament is very fair. It was, I think the phrase you may know is eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It's something that's rather heinously still done in some, really, really radical Muslim communities. They take that literally, and we've seen one or two occasions of that in places like ISIS, where there's been a terrible judgmental approach to things. However, there's a kind of fairness about it. And don't hear me, I think it's awful. But there is a kind of a fairness, you do this to me, I do that to you. Now, that is still alive in the Western world, isn't it, in a much kind of more benign way. But basically tit for tat, you hurt me, I hurt you, you do something to me, and I'm going to remove myself from you, and I'm not going to get involved in you. And so it goes on. And actually the consequence of that, an eye for an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, limb for a limb, body for a body, platoon for a platoon, country for a country. I mean, the dynamics of that is war. And so when Jesus came, he literally abolished that whole thing. And I call it the law of consequence, where you do something and the consequence of that is that something happens that is negative. And Jesus actually became the consequence taker. He became the person in the universe who took the consequence of sin. And so he started a new law. And it's as if he said, you can have my eye, you can have my tooth, you can have my body itself. I will take the blame. And so he bore the blame. And the more you unpack this as you grow in your Christian life, the more you realise that this is a pivotal, absolute universal changing, a seismic shift happened at that point. And then we come into the law of love and forgiveness. And the first thing is death, but it leads to life and grace. And with the death of Jesus and the forgiveness that was given freely at that point, because he said, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do, something incredible happened to the world. And when I became a Christian, I was actually, without realizing anything of the world that I was coming into, that entrance had been made for me to come into the kingdom of love and to live in a new realm where there is new kind of rules apply in this realm, where there is healing, where there is safety, security, a God who takes care of his children. And so it is an incredible thing that happened when Jesus forgave the world. And so, if you like, we flipped from the law of consequence and the way in which that were into the law of love and grace, where because of the death of Jesus, then resurrection life came. And those who've studied the Gospels and those who have set out to disprove the resurrection of Jesus have found it very, very difficult to do, because there's so much record that Jesus actually came alive again. He was resurrected. And again, in that realm, there is eternal life. I actually genuinely do not believe I will die. I think I will fall asleep. But death to the Christian is like going to sleep, only you fall asleep in this world and you wake up in the next, is what the Bible calls heaven. But again, these are things that might sound strange to you, things that you can discover. So the thing is about giving forgiveness, and I've said this to people that have found this really difficult, is that you empower the seismic change in your life. That you flip, if you like, yourself and your situation out of the law of consequence. And again, if you've been to, say, sexual abuse as a child, you are living out the consequence of what's happened to you. But as you forgive and let go, it is the most empowering thing that you can be given. I used to say to my clients, that if you like, forgiveness is the wheelbarrow where you pick up everybody else's crap and dump it on the cross. You get it out of you and you dump it somewhere else. Now, it is a process, but your death, your awful situation, is the beginning of something wonderful happening. And so you come into the realm of God's grace and healing and freedom and love. And so he begins to heal you. He begins to free you. He begins to lift off you the trauma of what has happened. Now, I've experienced that in my own life, and I've walked it through with other people. It's not an easy road, but it is a journey where wonderful, wonderful things can happen. And I can say that with absolute sincerity because I've walked it with people. And some of the creativity that's come out of that walk has been astounding. So forgiveness is not saying about this situation, you did this to me and I forgive you, it's all right. It'll never be all right. But forgiveness is saying, I want to go into the realm of Jesus. And I don't know whether you watched The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe, but when Aslan died, the kingdom with the White Witch and everything, they thought that they'd won. They thought this was it. They were really, really triumphant. But actually, that death brought about, changed winter back into summer again. And so that secret weapon of the death of Jesus translates us from the winter of our trauma into the summer of the healing and freedom of God's love. And forgiveness actually literally jump-starts, if you like, it brings us into the law of grace and love. So it is the most empowering thing we are ever given. Wouldn't it be awful if we could confess our own sin and be cleansed and dump that lot on Jesus, but be stuck with all the flipping crap that people have dumped on our lives? That would be absolutely awful. But again, forgiveness is the kind of thing that deals with sin. So we are empowered to take other people's crap and dump it back on the cross. And it is the most wonderful thing that you can do. So I don't know how this has been presented to you, but if you truly understand forgiveness, it is a gift that God gives you to remove the trauma and crap on you and put it back into the death of Christ, and immediately he flips that open and it begins to work for you. Now, I've been through this and I've been through a lot of trauma. And I won't lie, it was obviously really hard. But I will say that has become my wealth. Many of the times I work with people, when I bring answers to them, I've test-driven these answers. I've felt the pain that they're expressing to me. I know that God can help them because he's turned up for me in really dire situations. And so at that point, I'm glad that I understand, and I'm glad that I can bring them a help that is real and has been substantiated in my own life. And so now my pain is a wealth for them to come out of their pain. And this is not a strange thing. Many of the charities, if you go and find out who started them, there will be people that have been through terrible things but have used that pain, and then they've started something to alleviate the suffering of others. And this is an instinct that we truly do understand. And so I hope that helps you in this understanding of forgiveness. So I do invite you to forgive, but understand that it opens the realm for really wonderful things to happen. And whether you're a Christian or not, I think even in therapy, if there's no faith involved, people will say to you that forgiveness, being letting go of the revenge and the anger and the hate, really helps you, because whilst it remains in your heart, it's a bit like a cancer cell. It grows and it takes over more and more ground. And so we need to find ways in which we can let things go. And so for the Christian, being forgiven for the stuff that is dirt that we've wandered into, but also being able to let go of that which people have been done to us and put it in the hands of Jesus, who takes the death and then starts something happening within us that is about life and hope and health and love. I do hope that helps. And if you're one of these people for which you're looking at really painful issues, I just want to say I hope in no way I have hit those wounds in an insensitive way. I would not do that for the world, because I do truly understand what trauma is like, and I know how awful it can feel, and I just want you to know that that matters to me. I care about that, and I would never ever want to cause offence or hurt in areas where you've been hurt, and if I ever do it, it would be truly by mistake, and my heart would be never to do it. So I feel that I need to say that, because I know we're on very, very sensitive, raw ground when we're talking about these issues. But I do hope that you understand that forgiveness is a gift of empowerment, not something you have to do that you don't want to do. In fact, if that's where you're at, then go on that journey a bit further to understand what it's about, because never will God say in the areas where you've been deeply traumatized, and you need to forgive. He is never like that. He understands why it's difficult, and he'll say, yeah, I really get that. It was really hard for me to forgive too. Come along, take my hand, I'll help you. I hope that helps. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.